Layla, the young belly dancer chasing dreams in Dubai, and Khalid, the wealthy married businessman who couldn't resist temptation, seemed destined for a secret romance. But their forbidden love would trigger a chain of betrayal, obsession, and vengeance that ended in a chilling double murder beneath the desert sands. Dubai's nightlife had always been a place of fascination, where wealth and extravagance blended with mystery and secrecy. In the middle of this glamorous scene was Layla, a 22-year-old belly dancer who had traveled far from her small hometown to chase a dream. On stage, she was radiant, every movement graceful, every turn enchanting. The audience never saw the girl beneath the glitter, the one who returned to a quiet apartment each night, alone, with only her reflections in the mirror for company. For many, she was simply an entertainer, but for Layla, performing was her only way of survival in a city that rewarded beauty but demanded silence. Among the countless men who admired her was Khalid, a wealthy businessman with a reputation for power and influence. At first, he was just another face in the crowd, seated at the back of the hall, watching her with an intensity that unsettled her. Yet as the weeks passed, his presence became impossible to ignore. He never approached her in public, but she found flowers at her door after shows, expensive perfumes left anonymously at her dressing room, and notes written with promises of affection. For someone who had spent her life searching for genuine love and stability, the attention felt intoxicating. She convinced herself that perhaps this was different, that maybe fate had sent her someone who truly saw her beyond the sequins and music. But Khalid was no ordinary admirer. He was a man with responsibilities, a wife, and children waiting for him at home. His pursuit of Layla was not just about desire. It was an escape from the controlled world he lived in. He began to follow her performances more frequently, ensuring she noticed his devotion. Soon, whispers began among other dancers about the businessman who lingered too long in her shadow. Though she tried to ignore the warnings, the loneliness she carried made her vulnerable to his charm. Layla's life slowly began to change. The gifts grew more extravagant, dinners at hidden restaurants followed, and secret meetings became a dangerous habit. For the first time, she felt seen and wanted in ways she had never experienced before. Yet, deep within, a voice of caution reminded her that this affection came with a heavy cost. The city was filled with unspoken rules, and she knew breaking them could destroy everything she had worked for. What she didn't realize was that this romance, wrapped in secrecy and temptation, would soon lead her down a path from which there would be no return. Khalid's affection for Layla soon turned into something much darker than she had anticipated. What began as flowers and notes quickly evolved into a relentless desire to keep her close, no matter the cost. He arranged private drivers to pick her up after performances, reserving luxurious suites in hotels where they could escape the eyes of the world. At first, the attention thrilled her. She wore the designer dresses he bought, enjoyed lavish dinners, and felt like she belonged to a different life altogether. Yet beneath the sparkle, there was an uneasiness that she could not shake. Every time she saw his wedding ring glint in the light, she was reminded of the line they were crossing. In the small circles of dancers and performers, gossip traveled quickly. Some whispered of her relationship with a married man, while others warned her that she was inviting trouble into her life. For Layla, the words stung, but the loneliness in her heart silenced her doubts. She clung to the belief that Khalid's promises meant something real, that he might one day leave behind the life he claimed to be trapped in. The secrecy only deepened her attachment, as if their hidden world was proof of a love too powerful to be understood by outsiders. But the secrecy also carried risks. Khalid's wife, Amal, was no stranger to suspicion. She had noticed subtle changes in her husband's routine, the late-night phone calls he answered in hushed tones, the unexplained absences disguised as business trips, and the faint perfume that lingered on his clothes, a scent she did not own. At first, Amal dismissed her doubts, convincing herself that her husband's loyalty was intact. Yet with each passing week, her unease grew stronger, and the truth became harder to ignore. Meanwhile, Layla began to sense the walls closing in. She would catch sight of the same car parked near her apartment late at night, or receive calls where no one spoke on the other end. A part of her wanted to pull away, to escape before it was too late, but Khalid's insistence made it nearly impossible. He spoke of their bond as if it were unbreakable, reminding her of the life he had given her access to. Layla convinced herself that her fear was only in her imagination, a trick of nerves. What she could not see was the storm quietly brewing behind closed doors, a storm that would soon sweep both of them into a fate neither had expected. The fragile balance of Khalid's double life began to collapse the moment Amal's friend spotted him with Layla at a luxury hotel. The sight of her husband with a young dancer confirmed every suspicion Amal had pushed aside for months. She no longer needed guesses or intuition. She had undeniable proof. The betrayal consumed her, burning away the quiet patience she had carried through her marriage. To the outside world, Amal appeared calm and dignified, but within her, anger and humiliation churned like fire. She could not bear the thought of neighbors whispering about her husband's scandal, of her children growing up in the shadow of his shame. In her mind, this was more than infidelity, it was a destruction of her honor. Instead of confronting Khalid, Amal chose a colder path. She sought help from those she trusted in her extended family, people who shared her belief that family reputation was worth protecting at any cost. Through them, she arranged surveillance on Khalid, confirming his routine and the extent of his relationship with Layla. The reports cut her deeper than she expected. She read about expensive gifts, secret holidays, and lies told with ease, and her pain hardened into a dangerous resolve. For Amal, there was no turning back. If she allowed this affair to continue, she would forever be a wife betrayed, a woman laughed at behind her back. She vowed to reclaim control of her life, even if it meant blood. Layla, unaware of Amal's growing plot, found her own world changing in disturbing ways. She noticed men she did not recognize loitering near her apartment, their eyes following her as she entered or left. At night her phone would ring, only to fill the room with silence when she answered. The unease grew unbearable, but when she turned to Khalid, he dismissed her fears as paranoia. His arrogance blinded him, convincing him that no one would dare interfere in his private life. But danger was no longer a distant possibility, it was already circling closer. Layla began to sense that their secret was unraveling, that they were no longer hidden. The very city that had once felt like her escape now seemed filled with eyes and whispers. And yet she could not bring herself to walk away. Khalid's promises kept her bound, even as the shadows around her thickened. Neither she nor Khalid realized that Amal's silent rage was preparing to strike, and when it did, it would be swift, merciless, and irreversible. The night that sealed Layla's fate began with what seemed like another secret rendezvous. Khalid had arranged for her to join him at a secluded villa outside the bustling city, a place he promised would be theirs alone. The invitation stirred unease in her chest, but his persistence eventually broke through her hesitation. He assured her it was safe, a private escape where no one would disturb them. Layla, torn between her instincts and her desire to keep him close, agreed, where she was walking into the heart of a deadly plan. Amal had already learned of the meeting through her quiet surveillance. For weeks she had studied every detail of Khalid's movements, every lie he told, and every secret trip he took to see Layla. This time she decided it would end. Carefully she involved her cousin, someone she could trust to help carry out what she believed was justice for the betrayal she endured. Together they plotted to use the villa as the stage where both Khalid and his mistress would be silenced forever. Amal's pain had hardened into something unrecognizable, a cold determination that nothing short of vengeance could satisfy. As Layla entered the villa that evening, the atmosphere felt strangely heavy. The rooms were silent, the air tense, and Khalid's usual charm carried an edge of distraction. She brushed off her unease, thinking it was simply her nerves. Hours passed, but the night did not unfold as she expected. Somewhere outside, footsteps echoed and unfamiliar voices whispered. Suddenly, the walls of secrecy that had protected their love seemed to crumble, leaving her vulnerable. Khalid, caught off guard, realized too late that his wife had been watching all along. By morning, Layla's friends began to panic when she failed to return home. Calls went unanswered, and her absence from work raised alarms in the small circle of dancers who cared for her. Authorities were notified, and an investigation quickly uncovered signs of a struggle at the villa. Broken glass, scattered belongings, and traces of blood painted a grim picture. Khalid, too, was nowhere to be found. His disappearance shocked even those closest to him, while Amal maintained a mask of grief and confusion, insisting she had no idea where her husband had gone. Behind her facade, however, Amal carried a chilling calm. She had carried out her plan with precision, leaving behind a mystery that authorities would struggle to untangle. For her, the villa was no longer just a place of betrayal. It had become the ground where love, pride, and vengeance collided in silence. The disappearance of Layla and Khalid quickly became one of the most talked-about mysteries in Dubai. Rumors spread like wildfire across the city, weaving stories of kidnapping, revenge, and scandal. The police launched an intensive investigation, tracing every step of Khalid's final days. Surveillance cameras became the key to unraveling the truth. Footage revealed a vehicle leaving the villa late at night, one registered under the name of Amal's cousin. This small detail cracked open the carefully constructed facade Amal had built. When questioned, Amal presented herself as a grieving wife, feigning ignorance of her husband's whereabouts. Her tears seemed convincing, but investigators noticed her calmness was too controlled. The pressure mounted when her cousin, confronted with mounting evidence, finally confessed. He admitted to assisting Amal on the night of the disappearance, revealing how she had orchestrated everything in the name of honor and revenge. The revelations shocked the community. Amal's plan had been as ruthless as it was calculated. According to the cousin, both Khalid and Layla were overpowered, silenced, and taken to the desert under cover of darkness. There, far from the city's glittering skyline, the bodies were buried beneath the endless sands. It was a chilling end for a love affair that had once felt untouchable. When the remains were eventually uncovered, the news shattered Layla's small circle of friends and devastated her family back home, who had believed she was building a better life in a foreign land. To them, she became another young woman lost to the cruelty of circumstances she could not control. Khalid's family, meanwhile, faced disgrace and confusion, their once respected name now tied to betrayal and murder. Amal was arrested, her mask of dignity stripped away as the truth of her actions came to light. The courtroom became the final stage of the tragedy. Prosecutors painted a picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and humiliation, willing to sacrifice not only her husband but also an innocent young woman to reclaim her pride. The verdict was clear. Amal was found guilty and sentenced to a life behind bars. Yet, even as justice was served, the story left scars that no judgment could heal. The case lingered as a haunting reminder of how love, when twisted by secrecy and betrayal, can spiral into violence. Layla's forbidden romance had promised escape and belonging, but in the end, it led her into the desert, where her dreams were buried forever in silence and sand.